the West begins in Fort Worth, Texas, to around the globe. You are listening to Talk of the Night. And now, your host, Paranormal Phil. Thank you, and good evening, good morning, wherever you may be around the world, around the globe, or even in your own backyard. I am Paranormal Phil, and later on in the show tonight, we're going to be joined by my guest, Randi-Lee Bowslaugh, and I hope I pronounced that right, as we talk about mental health in our lives and a few other things, and her books as well that talk about it. So, but first, I want to mention, I'm sorry about being late, but I had some computer gremlins that decided that they wanted to cause problems. So, I got them fixed, so don't worry. We are live now, and I'm just sharing this real quick. But first, before we get into things with my guest, I'm going to read a story up on the Talking of the Night website, talkingofthenight.com. And it has to deal with what we're talking about tonight. Recent suicides by Navy sailors in the Navy wants to boost morale. The Navy and the U.S. George Washington is working on team building events in hopes of boosting morale after 3 shipmates died by suicide within a week in April. However, some sailors say it's not enough. And I do want to mention, when I was in the service back in the mid-90s, George Washington, the U.S. George Washington was one of the battle groups that I was part of. So I know that ship very well. I wasn't on that ship, but I know the ship very well. But continue on. The Navy has plans for hopefully repairing morale aboard the U.S. George Washington with team building exercise such as video game competitions, recreation, and moving sailors off the ship. It didn't go far enough, some sailors say, as they spoke with NBC. According to Lieutenant Commander Robert Myers, a Navy spokesman, the Navy plans to host activities and ask each department to submit ideas on how crew members could interact off-ship. It could be anything, Myers said. One sailor mentioned some of the suggestions, but asked to remain anonymous out of fear of retaliation. Of course, you can read the full story up on the Talk of the Night website by clicking on the link just below the story. So, let's get to talking about my guest here. Get to the bio here. Randi-Lee was born and raised in Ontario, Canada, and from a young age, she had a passion for helping others. She attended Niagara College and graduated at the top of her class from Community and Justice Service. After completing her placement at Recovery House for alcohol and drug addiction, post-graduation, she worked at a Native Friendship Center for 2.5 years while pursuing a university education in psychology. Randi-Lee continued working in social service for another 4 years as an employment counselor until she left to pursue her own passions. Randi-Lee is an author and outspoken advocate for mental health, sharing her true stories with honesty. From the age of 14, she struggled with depressive thoughts. There were times in her life that she wasn't sure she would continue. Depression continues to battle in her life, but she is glad that she continued to live. She has spoken at events that promote wellness and compassionality. Compassionately shares her experiences with her own mental health. In 2021, she started a YouTube channel, Right or Die Show, to spread awareness about various mental health issues and to end stigma associated with mental health. So please welcome to the show, a little bit late, but please welcome to the show my guest, Randi-Lee Bowslaugh.
Hello.
Hello, it's good to have you, even though a little bit late.
Better late than never, right?
Yeah, I'm a stickler for, I'm a Capricorn, so I'm a stickler for conformity and, the business sense.
Well, I mean, you were ready. It wasn't your fault.
Yeah, it was my computer's fault.
You were there.
So tell the listeners a little bit about you other than what I've read there.
So other than what you read, I've got 2 kids. My stepdaughter is 18 now, and she's got a 2-year-old baby, so I'm a grandma, and I'm only in my 30s. And then my younger kid, he's 15, he has autism, and he is actually opening his own business come June, which I'm helping him do.
Oh.
Been married 10 years this year. I have lots of fur babies. I got 4 cats and 3 dogs. And I think you said the rest.
Okay. Well, I got me a cat. I've never had kids, but I'm hoping one day to have kids. But for right now, I got a cat.
Cats are better than kids.
I don't know about my cat. He can be a pain in the butt sometimes. But
so can kids.
True. So, tell us about the training that you received in college and the working world that helped you talk about mental health.
So when I first went to college, I wasn't really sure what I was going to take, and I ended up, it was actually funny, I ended up just taking whatever program was available, because by the time I applied, most of them were full. So I ended up in pre-community services first, which is basically something most people take before they go into the social services program. And from there, I was like, okay, what am I going to take now? Because I want to actually get a job. And I took the community and justice. So in that program, we learned a lot about our law here in Canada. So we had to go through our Canadian laws, some of the Ontario laws, and then learn about our criminal justice system, which is pretty eye-opening when you actually get down to it. Mm-hmm. And then we had to do a placement, and that is where I learned the absolute most. In college, there was lots of psychology classes, which I gravitated towards and loved, especially the abnormal psychology, which is the one that talks about all the mental health stuff. But the Drug and Alcohol Recovery House taught me so much more, because it was working day in and day out with, it was a male drug and alcohol recovery house, and working with these guys who were trying their hardest to fight their addictions, to manage them. And, you know, some of them failed, some of them left, some of them came back, and I learned a lot from that. And then from there, going into the workforce, just working with people and meeting other people who were willing to share their struggle with me, let me understand it a whole lot more, because you can read books about it. You can be taught about mental health, and you should, but it's very different than actually speaking to people who are living it.
Yeah. And I know all that about all that. I mean, I deal with depression and everything like that. Luckily, I was never diagnosed with PTSD from my military service. I tried, but they said, no, you don't qualify for it. Well, not that I think I got too much of a good outlook on life. I always told them that no matter how bad I got it, yes, I might be depressed and feeling down, but no matter how much I do that, I never felt like I ever wanted to take my life because of it. But there are people in this life that think there is no help, there is no way out, and they feel that's the only way out. And unfortunately, that's not.
Yeah. I've been there, thought those thoughts.
So, you took these courses and then worked with helping others. Now, most people, if you're interested in stuff like that, they would stay in that career. Like me, I'm interested in doing radio. I've been doing it for 10 years. So I'm interested in that, and I don't think I would do anything else, but other than do movies, write my own screenplay, which I'm working on. But other than that, radio has always been a thing for me. Even other jobs that I loved, I worked at an amusement park and had fun scaring the hell out of people. But I mean, even though I scared the heck out of them, they always came back to find out what I was going to say next or something like that. Just because I was that personal. But I always found that was what I wanted to do. Now, was this something that you always wanted to do, help others with mental health, or was there other plans?
Well, when I was little, I was going to be a famous actor. Which is probably why I love being guests on shows and having my YouTube channel. But I liked helping people, but I didn't know what that was going to look like. And so when I went and started in the workforce and working in social services, at the beginning, I loved it because I was doing exactly what I liked doing, was helping people. But there's a lot of red tape. There's a lot of stuff you have to do to continue getting government funded, because here in Ontario, the places that I worked were government funded. And it didn't sit right with me. Some of the stuff that we had to do to keep our funding wasn't morally right, in my opinion. So I'll give you an example, because it wasn't anything like crazy, super shady. Don't get me wrong on that. But in the employment field, you had to have a certain percentage of your clients closing their file as being employed. Well, certain months were more difficult because in the winter months all of the ports and stuff are shut down, because I live near the border. And so a lot of people get laid off and there's not as many jobs. Yeah. So we would have to close files saying, oh, this person is babysitting. This person is delivering newspapers. Yes, it was true they were doing that, but that wasn't their job. Like, that wasn't a career that they could actually pay their bills. That was just a way they were trying to make some ends meet. So it just felt wrong to me that we were basically saying to these people, I can't help you anymore because the government says that I can't. And so by going away from that and talking more about mental health, I feel like I'm making much more of a difference now. Okay,
yeah. I can see where something like that would drive somebody nuts. I spent 3 months in a homeless shelter when I moved to Texas, and that's all they give you is those 3 months, and then you have to go out on your own or go to another homeless shelter. But as a veteran, I was more privy to a more stable thing, more options and everything like that. But it's still, in Texas, it does a lot more for their homeless people than they do in Los Angeles, where I grew up in Southern California. So, I mean, but I can understand where they get their funding. They can only do so much for so long. They can't house them completely. But they also, at the same time, I feel didn't really help that much. I mean, of course, luckily for me, I was always the person that, well, my parents taught me this, instilled this into me, where if you want something, you go out and do it. And I would go out and make it happen. Of course, it took me a while to get things going, but I did it. So I understand where you're coming from that.
Yeah.
So I wanted to follow up on that, but I think you already answered it. Now, you mentioned that you, and your bio mentions it too, that you struggled with mental health. Can you tell us a little bit about those struggles?
Yep. So when I look back, as an adult and I look back, I can kind of pinpoint the age that I started feeling depressed. And I say it that way because when you are a young kid or a teenager, I was 14 at the time, you don't realize most of the time. I mean, I think now that we're talking about it more and it's more out there in the world, kids are able to identify it a little bit sooner. But back then, in the late 90s, early 2000s, I just thought that everybody felt that way. I just thought that it was normal to want to hurt yourself or to want to die, because I wasn't taught about mental health. I had no idea that, no, my brain should not be telling me I'm a horrible person every day. But that's what it was doing. So I just thought that was normal because it was my normal. So I dealt with that all through being a teenager. I tried to hide it from people because I felt like I felt two things. So one was that it was normal, so why should I tell anybody anyways? Because nobody's going to care. And the flip side of that was, if it's not normal, then I am weak, and I don't want people to know that either, because I was the golden child. So I had an older brother, and at that time he was getting into a lot of trouble. He was getting into drugs and in and out of jail. So I was the golden child in the house, where my mom's expectations were very high for me, because my brother kind of made it so he had no expectations, because he was just always in and out of jail. Yeah. And so to admit that I was depressed or that something was wrong, well, that didn't sit right in my brain either. So it was a really rough go as a teenager. My stepfather was also an alcoholic, so that didn't help in the house. And there was just a lot of crap also on top of it. When I finally did move out, and I had my kid at 19, and I went to college. College was great. The depression sort of took a back seat, which was fantastic. But
that's always a good thing.
Yes, yeah. But it never truly goes away, right? When you have mental health, it's always there. It's just, how can you manage it? How can you cope with it? So during college, it was all right. Things were a little bit easier. As my kid got older, he started having a lot more meltdowns, like as we got closer to getting the diagnosis of autism, and work became more stressful, and just life became more stressful, and the depression kind of came back. And it got so bad at that time, I was in my mid to late 20s, that I had formulated a plan as to how I would end my life. And I was at work the one day, and I went, and I'm thinking about this plan, because this plan was going to require me to drive off a bridge on my way home from work.
Wow. And
I went into a coworker's office, and I said, "This isn't good. I need to do something. I shouldn't be thinking like this." And by that time, I knew that was not a normal thing. And so that's when I called up a psychologist, and, well, actually, no, first I went through my work's EAP, the Employee Assistance Program, and got a therapist through there. And I started therapy, I started on antidepressants, and, now we're years later, and things are much better, and I'm able to talk about it and share it with the world.
I'm glad you're here to share it with the world and help people that might be going through the same thing. And of course, that was your way of overcoming the depression, by having that feeling like you wanted to end your life, and then coming to the realization that I need to talk to somebody about this. Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, talking to somebody is one of the best things you can do. Even though at the time it feels like you're admitting defeat. And to be quite frank, you are admitting defeat, and it's okay to do that. That's just one of the big hurdles I had to get over in my brain. Because like I said, I was the golden child. I was supposed to be perfect. Because I was the one that, my mom always said, "Well, you're the only one that I got to see graduate high school. You're the only one I got to see graduate from college. Oh, you're going to have this, and you're going to have this." There was so much pressure.
Yeah.
That admitting that I needed to talk to somebody was a huge struggle in and of itself. Mm-hmm. But when I finally admitted to myself that I had to talk to somebody, I admitted defeat, and it was the best thing ever.
Okay, well, yeah, like me, I grew up in the early 70s, so my sister was probably like you. She was the one that was always the one that my parents paid more attention to, but and I was more the troublemaker of things. I was always the daredevil. I could have swore I was going to be a stuntman when I was young. Climbing trees, falling off bikes at high speed and still getting up. I'm surprised I made it past 18. But No, it wasn't till I never really had the depressive thoughts when I was growing up. I think I was too much of a daredevil, like I said, and focused on everything else. That even though because like my sister, even I was the kind of person that helped people, even though I was a daredevil. My sister in kindergarten, my mom told me about where I would do her kindergarten coloring work just so that way I made sure she didn't color outside the lines and get a bad grade. I mean, but at the same time, like I said, I was the one. I'm paying for it with my body now, but I enjoyed life when I was younger, and then I think when my depression hit was shortly after my military service, where my body started falling apart as I got older, and tremors and everything else, and it just went downhill. But I still always find a way to remain positive and keeping busy with my radio show. It's a full-time job in itself, even though it's only part-time hours. You still got a lot to think about, but it keeps my mind off of those thoughts. And I'm thinking, is that some way that people can probably kind of not get rid of the depression and stuff like that, but kind of soothe it down a little?
Oh yeah, so there's so many different coping strategies, and finding something that you enjoy. So like your radio show, and for me, when I found my YouTube channel, I was in love with it. I'm so passionate about it. And so when you find something that you really like, it can be a coping strategy, because even those days that I'm feeling really down, it's like, okay, what can I do to make me happy again? Not necessarily happy, but just more elated than before. Because it's not this sadness. My depression isn't a sadness. It's more of a nothingness. Mm-hmm. And so when I'm having those days, when I go, okay, but I have a guest, so I have to do it, I can't cancel. I feel so much better after doing it, because I love doing it. So when you find something that you like doing, and for some people it's exercise, some it's yoga, some it's reading a book, going for a nature walk, whatever it is, you have to find something you like doing. And even on those days you don't want to do it, once you start, you'll appreciate the fact that you did it.
Yeah, and there are people out there that I've heard it say, and I don't know what your thoughts on it, but that if people are going to commit suicide, they're not going to tell anybody, they're just going to do it, and stuff like that. But I believe there are always some kind of signs out there that's going to lead you to believe what they're about to do, and you can reach out and help them, even though some people will say, I don't need no help. I've been there myself. I say, I don't need help. I can do this on my own, just because of my upbringing, where, like I said, my parents said, if you want anything, you got to get out there and do it. And that puts a lot of pressure on me, because I know I can do it, but at times I do want help. Like my radio show, I'm not only the host, but also the show's producer, booking agent, sound engineer, webmaster, voiceover artist, and promotion crew and everything like that. And that's a lot of work for one person to do. But I always find a way to do it, because, it's something that I love to do. But like I said, there are people out there that think if people are going to commit suicide, they're going to do it regardless whether you help them or not, or talk to them or not. And I want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so there's going to be people that do it out of the blue, and you're like, whoa, what? But those are the people, I'm going to say, that you don't know super well. Because if you know somebody really well, you will notice signs. There are signs. So when you know a person really well, if you notice a change in their behavior, and it can be something small, like all of a sudden, they used to maybe only go to Tim Hortons because Starbucks was too expensive, right? And then all of a sudden you see them buying Starbucks every day. That's quite a change in behavior from somebody who complained about the price to all of a sudden getting it every day. And so that should hopefully trigger you to go, all right, hey, why are you getting this all the time? I thought it was too expensive. They might, I mean, there's a good chance they're going to lie to you, but it could be that money doesn't matter anymore because they've made a plan. They've picked a day. They know what they're about to do. So who cares if they spend all their money?
Yeah.
Right. So, and it can be that small of a change that unless you know the person really well, you think it's out of the blue. But really, I always think that there are signs. Some people are harder to tell, but they're, so different signs could be, like I said, a change in behavior. I'm going to say that's the biggest one. Giving things away that they perceive they don't need anymore, but is kind of a weird thing to start giving away all of your stuff. If they start saying, no, I don't want to go out. No, I don't. Like everything is no all of a sudden, because they're just lack of interest in the stuff that they normally liked. So different things like that. And just talking about death, but maybe not directly talking about death, right? So they might not say, man, I really feel like killing myself. They might say something like, yeah, sometimes I wonder what it'd be like if I wasn't here. Yeah. Right? So they're not saying I'm going to kill myself, but they are talking about it. So it's little cues that I think you really have to look out for. And I think the people with the little cues are more committed to what they've decided is the right answer than those that are still being more vocal about wanting help.
Yeah, and now you brought up something that I did want to touch on, because you mentioned about people wanting to be like, I don't want to go out or anything like that. And my friends have noticed that too, but at the same time, I do it because I'm so busy with my radio show. I don't get much time to get out. And
that's why you really have to know the person, because it could literally be that they're too busy, that they're doing other things, right? Yeah. But maybe just ask a couple follow-up questions, make sure that that's the reason and it's not some kind of underlying decision.
Yeah. Now, there are times that I'll get out. Now, I do have... which I'm going to touch on this tomorrow with my guest talking about dating relationships, but I'm kind of more of a reserved, shy person and everything like that. So it makes it harder for me to, even though I have no problem talking on the other side of behind the mic and everything like that, or even on camera, in person, for some reason, I have more trouble with that. But I slowly work on it. It's not like I'm not totally reclusive like a mountain man or something like that. But people do need to understand that people are like that, but some people might actually see that. And as you said, you have to know the person, but some people might see that as like, oh, they're depressed, down, they don't want it. And then nobody seems to, of course, in this day and age, nobody seems to want to help with that.
And that's a big problem, too. It's a lot easier to just sort of go, okay, they never want to go out, so I'm just not going to ask them, no big deal, and kind of forget about them. But it's important to just, like, okay, so here's a great example. Me and my best friend, we both have mental health. We both have depressive times in life. And we might go months without seeing each other. But we always just shoot each other a text every once in a while. And I'll usually say, hey, I miss your face. Because I haven't seen her in a while. And just a quick, how are you? In a text. I'm not intruding on, like, if she's got stuff going on. Because I know with her son, there's sometimes a lot of stuff going on and work. And it's it's there, and sometimes it's just nice. Like when she does that to me, sometimes it's nice to go, oh yeah, somebody does care. Okay, yeah. It's just a nice thing to know. There is never going to be one cut and dry perfect answer when it comes to mental health. If there was, it would be so much easier.
Yeah.
But it's just being there for the person as best as you can.
All right. Well, we are at I was going to say the half, but since we started 10 minutes late, we're going to take each commercial break 10 minutes late. But we'll be right back with my guest, Randi-Lee Bowslaugh, as we continue talking about mental health. We'll be right back.
Stay today. Is it alright if I stay today? Take my time, far behind, leave my pride. Oh, is it alright if I stay? Is it alright if we just stay today?
Do you have a talk radio, Facebook Live, or YouTube show and would like guests for your show but don't know where to go to get them? Well, go to radioguestlist.com and sign up today. They have all different experts in different fields, and you can find the ones that are just right for your show. That's radioguestlist.com. Sign up today. It's free.
To advertise on Talk in the Night, send an email to talkinthe.night@outlook.com. Talk in the Night has plans to fit your budget. Get your product or business heard around the world by the Talk in the Night listening audience. Plans include 30-second spots and banner ads on the show's website and mentioned on the social media sites. So get your product or business heard around the world today. Shop the Talk in the Night merch store today and pick up one of the many products with 9 different designs to choose from. The store has men's and women's apparel, drinkware, houseware, and accessories. Pick up a t-shirt, coffee mug, or anything else on there and support the show today. Go to talkinthe.night.com to find a link to the merch store.
I'm happy on my own, making coffee just for one, and eating breakfast all alone. Fewer dishes to be done. I'm never running behind. You're never on my mind. No longer there to make me comb my hair, fix my tie, or kiss me goodbye. Swear I'm happy on my own.
And now, back to Talk in the Night with your host, Paranormal Phil. Okay, and we are back with my guest, Randi-Lee Bowslaugh, as we talk about mental health and her books, and we'll get into her books later. Now, I did want to mention for those people that heard her talking about Tim Horton coffee in the beginning, at the first part of the show. Tim Horton coffee is a Canadian coffee, if you don't know. It's slowly making its way down here in the U.S., but the only reason why I know it is because I was engaged to somebody in British Columbia, so for 10 years. But so
I guess it'd be like, what, your Krispy Kreme?
No, I'm not a coffee person, believe it or not.
Me neither. My husband is, though.
Yeah, the only way I used to drink coffee was when I was camping. And I put the grounds in hot water, stir it around, and drink it that way. Cowboy coffee, basically. But that was about the only, and that was very few and far in between that I would do that. So that was about the only way I would drink coffee. Otherwise, I'm not a coffee drinker, but I do know of Tim Horton because she loved Tim Horton coffee.
Yeah, we have a lot of them.
Now, talking about, we get back onto mental health and everything, you mentioned how you talked to somebody and overcame the thought. Now, when did you finally get the answers to the questions that you had about yourself that had been nagging you?
Oh, geez. I'm going to say actually last year was pretty eye-opening. So I first started in therapy, maybe like 10 years ago. And I've been going on and off. I haven't been going consistently that whole time. I go when it's really bad, get some skills and then use them. And then, sometimes when you don't use it on the regular basis, you're like, what did my therapist tell me I'm supposed to do again? You have to go back. So over the course of doing the therapy, I did a little bit of CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a way of trying to change the way your brain thinks. And then I did DBT, which is dialectical behavior therapy. And that was more giving me skills to use in the moment. And that I found was the most helpful part, the DBT. And I think the psychologist said that she used DBT a lot for people that had actually bipolar, because she suspected that I might have a little bit of it, but I was never actually diagnosed with it. But she did say that would be the best, and it really was. It was great. It taught me a lot of skills about staying in the moment, and sticking to facts when, one of my biggest problems is making a mountain out of a molehill and kind of blowing things completely out of proportion in my head without actually talking to the person. So I would play out an entire conversation with someone and not have actually had that conversation with them. And of course, because of the way that my brain thinks, the conversation would always end up with them hating me at the end. And so what my therapist did is she kind of took me through a conversation that I had coming up, that I had to have this conversation with my boss about reducing my hours at work. And I immediately went to, she's going to hate me. This is awful. And so she just goes, okay, when has there been a time that your boss has not agreed with you about your hours? Well, never. Does she know the situation going on that would need you to reduce your hours?
Yeah.
Yep, she does. And she just took me through these very logical questions. And by the end of it, I was like, oh, well, I completely made everything up. None of what my brain was telling me had any sort of truth to it. Yeah. And it made me feel a lot better. So that skill that she taught there to ask those logical questions has been a lifesaver for me. I mean, literally. And then last year, I actually got diagnosed with autism. And looking back, I'm like, oh my goodness, so much of my life makes sense now as well. Like all these weird quirks that I do, and these weird things that as a teenager people would kind of stare at me like, what are you doing? And would make me feel like I was the weird one. Yeah. As an adult, I've embraced my weirdness and I love it. But well, as a teenager, not so much.
I think a lot of people thought I was weird, especially like I mentioned about being always a daredevil, but also that I've been able to see spirits since I was 5 years old. I can see and communicate with them. I've been in the paranormal field for 30 plus years, so I mean, people think I'm weird. Some people think I'm weird, but it's more acceptable nowadays. But back then, 70s and 80s, people thought, oh, you're weird, because it wasn't widely known about. But yeah. I always embraced it because I knew that's what I loved. It came natural to me.
Yeah.
Because I was going to ask you about the autism and everything like that, but since you already answered that question, scratch that question out. But anyways, you mentioned about these different cognitive behavioral therapy and everything like that, and were you ever prescribed medication?
Yeah, so I've been taking antidepressants now for a while, quite a few years now. So I did something kind of stupid, which I do not recommend for anyone. So I first went on my antidepressants before I turned 30. Yeah, because when I was 30, I had cancer, so I was off of them. So before I turned 30, I was prescribed antidepressants, and I took them, and they were wonderful, and they made a huge difference. And then I felt so super good that I was like, I don't need them anymore. And instead of talking to my doctor about this, I just decided to stop taking them. I don't recommend that. I got super sick with the withdrawal symptoms. And then, of course, all of my horrible depressive thoughts came flooding back. And I struggled again for a long time to try and admit that I was wrong, that I shouldn't have done that. And then I went back on them actually just before COVID hit. And I plan to stay on them, or if I need to get off of them, talk to my doctor first.
Yeah, no, the reason why I asked that is because, I mean, I was prescribed anxiety medication, but it just dropped my heart rate. For some reason, it dropped my heart rate down way too low. And, of course, I was taking adult straight medication when I was a kid, so my body, a lot of medication is just immune to it. It just really doesn't help. But that's not the reason why I was asking about it, is because, and I don't know if you've ever heard of him, Tom McDonald, Canadian rapper that lives in Los Angeles now, but he had a big depression. He had anxiety and stuff like that. He was popping pills and stuff like that, and he got off of them, and he's doing a lot better with it without them. And I personally, I think the medication is actually doing a little more harm than it is doing good, because I really don't take a lot of my medication anymore, because it just, one, it doesn't help. Two, without being on the medication, it has helped me. But I'm not saying this is, just so that I'm clear and out there, this doesn't mean that you should do the same, or anybody listening should do the same. Like Randy said, talk to your doctor about it. But I feel that there are other avenues like the cognitive behavioral training and stuff like that, and talking with people and understanding what they're going through and everything like that would be probably a better bet. But again, I wanted to get your thoughts on it.
Yeah, so medication is not a bad thing in and of itself. Now, for some people, it doesn't work. For some people, it's needed. So it really depends on the individual person. The other part of that is, I don't think anybody should take medication for mental health without also doing therapy, because medication helps stabilize your brain chemicals. But if you don't do the therapy to work on the issues and to teach you skills to try and cope with it, then it's really like putting a Band-Aid on. So for me, like I said, I take my antidepressants every day. I don't plan on going back off of them. And I have also done therapy. So I have done therapy first, and nothing was kind of sinking into my brain until I started on the medication as well. So sometimes you need the medication to level it out to a point that you can accept the concept of what's going on in therapy and understand and work through it. And for some people, after they've, like I've interviewed other people where after they've gone through the therapy, they were able to come off their medication because they had the skills that they needed without needing to be on medication anymore. Yeah. For me, when I went off my medication, and I had already been in therapy, it still didn't work. I still needed the medication to help level on top of the therapy. So for me, I needed that dual kind of thing. So again, you really have to talk to your doctor. And the thing about medication too is there are so many different kinds. Like my son probably had to try about 10 different ones before he found one that worked. And again, for him, he needs to take it every day, and he can tell you himself he feels better. Like when he was in grade 7, he said, no, I'm not trying any more medication. The side effects, I don't want them. And we said, okay, fine. You continue going to your therapist and try and work on it, right? That's fine. You don't want to try anymore. After about a year or so of not being on anything and just doing therapy, he said, no, I want to try something because this isn't working on its own. And so that was his decision he made. And now he's 15, grade 10. And if I forget in the morning, if I'm like rushing around or something, get ready for work, and I forget to get him his medication out, he'll remind me because he feels so much better with being on it. And I've noticed a huge difference in him. Yeah. So again, it's not bad in and of itself, but there are sideful harms. There are harmful side effects. Same thing. It's 11 o'clock. I'm losing it. And you have to do it in conjunction with other things, other therapies, other coping strategies to get the real full good benefits.
Okay. I mean, personally, I've looked into a lot of medication and stuff like that, and that's another story for another show. But I don't personally. Again, this is my belief. But this leads me up to, and this I ask of all of my guests and everything like that. I ask a devil's advocate question.
Oh, yeah.
Just because I like throwing the guest off.
I love devil's advocate questions.
So speaking of medication and everything like that, some people helping and some people not. What is your thoughts on it maybe actually being like a placebo effect where you're being told that it works, it helps, but actually it's just a sugar pill basically?
Honestly, if it's just a sugar pill, but your brain is telling you it's working, who cares if it's a sugar pill? Unless you're diabetic, then that might be a bad thing. But really, if it's helping, to me, I don't care what it is, it's helping you, right? As long as it's not like harmful to your body, right? Like, if it's an actual hard drug or something, then my opinion's a little different. But if it's just like a placebo sugar pill, then it's not really doing any harm by taking it and just believing that it's working.
Yeah, and the reason why I ask these questions, like I said, is to throw the guests off, but also want to give everybody a fair shake on hearing different thoughts on it and stuff like that. Oh, I
love it. I love that. And then, sorry, one other thought just popped into my head. Sure. The other thing with that is mental health is all in the brain and what your brain is thinking. So really just being a placebo, that's okay. You're tricking your brain because the whole time your brain's been tricking you anyways.
Yeah, and that's why I asked the question is because couldn't we just probably just use like a sugar pill, but even,
you have to believe though, right? Yeah, like you have to be a true belief in it.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying is couldn't there be like, tell people that it is this, but it's actually the placebo.
And if it works for certain people, then cool, do it. Other people wouldn't, because some mental health truly is a chemical imbalance in the brain, especially if we're talking about things like bipolar. That is a true chemical imbalance where I don't think a placebo would work because it is a chemical imbalance. So if it's depression, there's some chemical issues going on with depression. That's why it's like a serotonin inhibitor or whatever. But if somebody truly told me this was what it was, maybe it would work for me. I don't know. But even if you don't want to take medication, like prescribed medication, talking to like a naturopathic doctor can sometimes help too, because a lot of times, especially for us Canadians who don't have sun for half the freaking year. Vitamin D plays a huge role in depression. And that's why seasonal affective disorder is also so huge. Because without our vitamin D, which comes from the sun, and it's the only way you get it is from the sun, then you can go into a depressed state, and all it is really just a lack of vitamin D. So you could just take a vitamin D supplement.
Yeah, and I spend so much time inside
so you should
working
take one.
and everything like that. My doctor gave me, because my vitamin D was a little on the low side. I was so busy with this was when I was starting to get everything going again, because I would stop my radio show for certain things like financial troubles, which I don't have to deal with right now. And then I stopped my show because my mom passed away in 2014, so I stopped for a couple of years doing the show because of that. But I think I was so busy when I started working on scheduling guests and promoting the show and getting everything going for the show, like on the beginning of March to start on March 21st. I think that dropped my vitamin D levels, because I was inside all the time, like, okay, I gotta get this done, I gotta type this up. But I was so focused on that, I wasn't worried about going outside or enjoying and of course, being from Southern California, I love there's a lot of sun there. You don't get much rain.
Yeah, a little jealous. There. Actually, we had a really sunny day today.
Today it's been sunny and 90-something, 95 or something like that here in Fort Worth, Texas. But, of course, we do get our thunderstorms, which we haven't had for, luckily, about a week now. So no tornadoes or anything like that.
Oh, good.
But I do enjoy the heat. Most people can't stand the heat.
Oh, I love the heat.
Me,
I don't know how I'm Canadian, but I love the heat.
Yeah, I can't stand the cold.
I hate the cold. I do not go outside in the winter.
Yeah, well, shoot, not last year, but the year before, we were down to minus 17 with the wind chill during that ice storm here in Fort Worth, Texas. This is so far south. I'm like, what the hell? Did I move to the north?
Yeah, I hate the cold. I don't ski. I don't skate. Wintertime, I stay in my house.
Yeah, well, that was the good thing about Southern California. You can visit the mountains and go skiing, but you didn't have to stay there. You can leave it up there. So, I mean, that worked for me. I can stand the snow a little bit, but in very short spurts of it, but not when it lasts like a week.
Yeah.
But I wanted to get into, let's see what, I want to make sure. Okay, we got time. But I wanted to talk about, let's get into your YouTube channel and everything like that, because we talked about it before the show and everything like that. But I want to ask, what is the name of the show, and what all do you, and I'm sure it's talking about mental health issues.
That it is. So it's called Write or Die Show. So it's write like you're writing something, WRITE. So Write or Die Show, and I interview other authors, and we talk about mental health. And I like doing it that way because, first, being an author, marketing is quite difficult. So I wanted to interview other authors. And then the other part of that is getting a personal perspective on mental health, because everybody has different coping strategies. Everybody's got a different story. And the more we can share our stories, the more we can share different coping strategies, I think the more that we can help people, because somebody out there will connect with them. They might not connect with every guest, but they will find at least one or two that they'll connect with, and they'll find strategies that's going to help them by listening to other people's stories. Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's why I do radio, and because most of my knowledge is in the paranormal field. But I still love talking about other topics because it gives people an option to hear what other people have gone through, how they coped, or what they're talking about, and gives them a different perspective. Because a lot of people, it's nowadays, it's think this way or think that way, instead of let's think about what the other side is saying and come up with their own conclusion rather than being told what we should believe.
Yeah.
Now, one of your guests, like I mentioned before the show, was Mario Canone's Ravioli. I
always said his name wrong. Yep.
So did I. But what was your take on him and his story? Since I had him on my show, and people that listen to my show can hear the whole thing about 2 hours of me talking about. I don't know how long you did with your show. I forget.
It was probably around 40, 45 minutes. I try to keep the episodes too. It's probably around there. His story, and I read his book actually. I did a review on my blog, and it's kind of crazy. That's the first word that comes to mind actually. His story, and like you said, go check out his episode on your show. But he went through a lot of difficulties, and then to find his way back from being in a coma is kind of inspirational, I would say.
Yeah.
And the hardships that he went through and that kind of thing was just, I kept going, no, that's not for real.
Yeah.
No way. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, what? So.
Yeah. Now, how did that episode play on the whole mental health thing? Because I know, like, what I thought, because I was doing more of the paranormal aspects of things on that show, whereas you're talking about the mental health portion of it.
Yeah. That's why people should watch both episodes. Look at the complete whole picture. Yeah. So from a mental health standpoint, all of those hurdles that he had to go over, having people in his life that he thought he could love and trust betray him, that plays with your mind big time. And all of a sudden you went from having a family to having nobody and being alone and isolated and hidden away, basically. That would play with anybody's mental health. That would be a very difficult situation. And that's what he was talking about, was how he had to keep his faith. And the only way he got through those was through his faith and through prayer, and just praying every day. He talked about, I remember he said something about when he didn't pray, that's when like the demons, or I can't remember what word he used.
I think he did use demons, because like I said, we touched on the paranormal aspect of things.
Yeah, so he said when he stopped praying, that's what would come back at him. And so it took a lot for him to go through what he did, and I think most people would have given up.
Okay. Well, I want to get into the commercial break here, because, like I said, we ran 10 minutes late and everything like that. So I'm trying to get through this as quickly as possible without being too quickly. But even though 2 hours seems to run pretty quickly, I mean, we've already been on about an hour and everything like that, and it feels like it's only been 30 minutes. But but we'll be right back after the short commercial break with my guest Randi-Lee Bowslaugh, as we continue talking about mental health, and we're going to get into phone calls and questions after the commercial break and talk about our books as well. We'll be right back.
Always keeping us close, but it's strange now. Dreams holding us closer. Meadows of our youth. 107 days, but we're calling it backwards. Our dreams holding us closer. Ooh, we can see so clear. Ooh, we can see so
The weather is getting warmer and people are out and about. Well, if you love ghost hunting, now is the time to pick up some new gear. GhostStock.com has a wide variety of equipment to choose from, and one of those items is Blue Buddy. He's back. The talking bear every investigator wants on their team. Click on the Ghost Stop banner ad at the top of the show's website and pick up your Blue Buddy today. Go to spring.com and sign up to create your own design or choose from a design from one of the many creators on there. Spring has ways to integrate your store on social media, custom stores, and they have digital and physical products. While you're there, check out the Talk in the Night merch store. To get started with Spring today, click on the banner ad on the Talk in the Night website. Go to the show's website and click on the links for each of my guests and purchase a book or other product that they may be promoting. Without them, there would be no Talk in the Night. Whether you're interested in the paranormal, conspiracy, technology, health, relationships, or any other topic the show covers, my guests have something for you. Check it out today on talkingthenight.com.
Feeling better now that you wrote a letter and you've always been against us again. If I'm the victim, then why am I always stricken with sickness, symptoms, and a twisted end? Can you please help me find my way? 'Cause I don't think I care enough today.
To call into the show, Skype Talk in the Night or by phone at 817-717-1280. Now back to Talk in the Night with your host, Paranormal Phil. Okay, and we are back with my guest, Randi-Lee Bowslaugh, as we continue talking about mental health. Real quick, before we get back into the topic with her, I want to mention that if you want to call into the show and ask her a question, you can Skype using the Skype name Talk in the Night or by phone at 817-717-1280. I almost forgot my own Skype number. And if you don't feel like calling in, you can also go over to Spreaker.com, sign up for a free account. It don't cost a thing. You don't have to record anything. You can join the discussion, join the chat. I do interact with people in the chat, and if you want, you can ask your questions there as well. Join me. I got Nicole in there as well asking questions. She's kind of a moderator for me a little bit. So feel free to pop in the chat, ask your questions, or just pop in there and say hi. Let me know you're listening. Because I do, like I said, interact with my listeners, because without my guests, without my listeners, I probably wouldn't have a show. No matter how many listeners I got, without guests and listeners, I would not have a show. I probably could do a show just me talking, but and I do that quite often sometimes. But 2 hours of talking, I start to lose my voice after a while. So it's better with guests. It's better with listeners to interact with. So let's get back into talking about mental health, and I do want to. I'll kind of back and forth between questions until we get calls or questions in the chat. A lot of questions in the chat. I'll kind of mix the two. So I do want to. Got a question from the chat from Nicole. It says, "I have depression and anxiety problems too. My body's starting to feel it. Is that normal?"
Oh, yeah, you can definitely exhibit your mental state physically. So I actually did yoga teacher training. I'm a 200-hour certified yoga teacher. And one of the books that we had to read, it was called Your Body Speaks Your Mind. Cannot remember who wrote it, but it goes through how your body manifests physically what you were feeling mentally. So 100% that's normal. And you have to treat your mental before your body will feel better. But definitely don't let your body just be in pain.
Yeah, now there are some people that are lazy. Like, I got a friend that is in a lot better shape than me, but she's always saying she's lazy and everything like that. Don't want to do much, and I do see that she's got problems. I tried to help her, but sometimes there are people that sometimes feel like they don't want any help. But and all you can do is be there for them and try to help them the best you can. But at the same time, you don't want to destroy your own thing. Like me, I'm a disabled veteran. I have tremors. I'm almost 50 years old. My body's falling apart. Like I mentioned, I was always the daredevil as a kid, so my body's feeling it. But even with getting around with a cane or a walker, I'm still moving a lot faster. And before I had the tremors and everything, like working at an amusement park, I was in my probably early to mid 40s, and I was getting around a lot quicker than some of the kids in their 20s. And people are like, how are you doing that? And I said, I'm doing something that I love to do. Especially when Halloween came around. People, the scare actors, a lot of times would chase people just maybe 5-10 feet, and then they were done. Me, I would chase them around the park before I gave up.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And people are like, how the heck do you have that much stamina? And I tell them, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's just always been me. I mean, heck, when I was in the Navy, we had our physical training and everything like that. And, of course, I was in a lot better shape than I am now. But we had to run 1.5 miles in a certain time limit. I think it was like 13 or 15 minutes. I forget what to kind of pass the physical training.
Yeah.
And I started off at the starting line in a sprint position. I had a cigarette in my mouth, smoking. And when they said go, I started off sprinting while smoking a cigarette. And there was only one person that beat me, and he didn't smoke, and he was in better shape than me. And nobody else started out with a cigarette. But I started out sprinting for about 1/4 mile, and then I had to drop the cigarette and everything like that, and I continued a steady pace run. But, I mean, I had long legs, so I used my legs as my propellant to keep going rather than having to worry about my upper body strength, which is almost non-existent. But I just, people are like, how do you have that much stamina to keep going and run 1.5 miles in 10 flat while sprinting and smoking a cigarette? And I was like, I guess I wanted to get this over with. It was just in my head. Talking about mental health, it was in my head to get this over with.
Yep. Yeah, your body manifests what your mind is telling you. So if it's telling you, let's do this, let's get it over with, you're going to do it.
Now, I saw something, and I do want to get back on the YouTube channel, but I do want to ask this real quick. How can we end the stigmatism associated with mental health, in your opinion?
So doing what we're doing now, talking. So my catchphrase that I didn't even realize I was creating in my very first episode of that show, I ended with, the only way you can end the stigma is by speaking openly and honestly. And I now end every episode saying that. It's now my catchphrase. Because if we are open, if we are honest, if we are willing to share, and you don't have to, because at the beginning of my kind of trying to deal with my depression, I wasn't open and honest with people. I was hiding it very much. And that's okay, right? But if we can start to make the conversation so that people feel able to be honest and open, that's how we're going to end the stigma. We have to make the space safe for people to be able to share what they are thinking and what they're feeling.
Okay, now, like me, my show ends with, until tomorrow night or next week, I shall see you on the dark side. Just because I started out talking about just paranormal. When I started out in radio, it was talking about the paranormal, so I figured ghost hunters do things at night, so why not see you on the dark side? And then, of course, back then I was using Eddie and the Cruisers' See You on the Dark Side music, but I can't use that no more because of copyright.
Yep.
But I had a lot smaller audience, so it's like it really didn't bother me too much. But then I figured, I started hearing the song and everything like that. I said, that's a perfect ending to my show. See you on the dark side. And it stopped. Now, let's get back into your YouTube channel. What are some of the other guests that you, just a few of them, some of the other guests that you had on there and what you talked about?
So I am super horrible with names, but I'll try my best to remember. So I've had Anna Lanier, Jim Marshall, Stephen Neff, Jeremiah. I cannot say his last name ever. So tons. I've actually just posted my 100th episode. So there are 100 guests that you can go and check out. Well, I'm going to say 99 guests because I did an episode last year when my brother had died. So I took up one of those spots. But we've talked about, and everything on the YouTube channel, it's all in playlists so that you can actually go in and go, okay, I am struggling with PTSD, and click on the playlist for PTSD and get all the guests that are going to talk about that. So we've done depression, anxiety, PTSD. Not that autism is a mental health, but because it has a special place in my heart, I've had a few guests come on and we talk about autism, eating disorders, sexual abuse and trauma, bipolar, borderline personality, addiction, probably other ones. Oh, I had one person talk about schizophrenia, OCD. So a lot, a wide variety.
Okay, so it gives you a lot of different things that people can look at that episode and get some kind of help from by listening to other people that talk about it and everything like that.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Tons of information.
Yeah, that's why like I said, I could stick to just the paranormal because being 30 years in the paranormal field, plus in the paranormal field, I mean, it comes natural to me. But I'm also the kind of person, I'm not a big book reader, and we're going to get into your books too. But I'm not a big book reader. I'm big on doing things and learning how to do it by just doing it. And that's how I got started in radio, just by listening to other people and kind of just doing it and trying it out and not worrying about, oh, is this going to work or not? Well, let me learn from my mistakes and everything like that.
Yeah.
So that's how I learn. But some people are into books. Some people love learning from books. I'm just not one of those people. But going back to the chat here, we got another question. Are nightmares associated with what we don't want to deal with during the waking hours? And I guess, could that play a part in mental health?
So there's a lot of different assumptions about dreams, and it really is going to depend on who you talk to, because I don't think there is one clear scientific answer for that one. I tend to side with the theory that it is something that we have seen or heard or thought about during the day. And so it's manifested into our dreams at night. I don't necessarily think that they are trying to tell us something. Maybe they are. I mean, when I found out I was pregnant in my dream before I found out I was pregnant. So, I mean, maybe they are. Yeah. It really creeped me out, actually.
Yeah, I think that's more my speed than your speed.
Exactly. That's why I had to share it. But I don't think they necessarily are trying to tell us something. But I do think that if we're dealing with stuff throughout the day, they can be manifested in our dreams. And I think that's how, like if we look at PTSD, a lot of PTSD it triggers through nightmares. So if dreams weren't connected to what we were doing, then there would be no connection between PTSD and nightmares and night terrors.
Okay, now talking about the YouTube channel, why the show title and how did you come up with it?
It was actually my friend that came up with it. So we were sitting in my basement. Like that's where I do all my podcasting from. Although soon my office will be upstairs. So excited. But we were sitting and I was telling her the idea for the show and the names that I had kind of come up with. Now my husband had helped me come up with, and I don't even remember what they were because I didn't particularly care for them. So they had no lasting effect. And so my friend was like, well, what about Ride or Die? And I was like, that's awesome because it's the play on words of Ride or Die, which I thought was cool. And writing was my very first coping mechanism as a teenager. I wrote poetry. And so it kind of was perfect because that was how I dealt with my mental health at the time. That's how I dealt with my suicidal thoughts was by writing. And so the show, it was perfect. And there was another podcast that was already called Ride or Die. So I had to call it Ride or Die Show.
Yeah. No, that's why when I came up with the idea for the name for my show, I was always searching around, was this name used or everything like that, because I did not want to have to edit the show. Now, I mean, I looked, nobody else was doing it because when I started, I got inspiration from a late night talk radio show, Coast to Coast AM, and Art Bell doing the show. And so that's kind of based, excuse me, I got the hiccups. But they kind of had the same premise as me. I kind of took their premise a little bit. But I was like, this is inspiration. I'm not going to take their name. I'm going to come up with my own name. I'm going to come up with my own style and everything like that. And I'm not going to do 5 hours like I think they do 5 hours. I'm not going to do that. Wow. My butt can't stand sitting in the chair that long. I got to be always on the go or doing something. I just can't do it. But anyways, I was like, talking to Night Works because I love being up late at night. I love talking about the paranormal, and nighttime is the best time for anybody listening to a show because they can, if they're working during the day, they can relax by listening to the show, or they can listen to the recording too as well. But if they're working nights, I figured night is probably the best time, and I didn't want to do the late night like they did, which was, well, no, I take that back. They didn't do 5 hours. They did, they did 5 hours because it was 10 at night till 3 in the morning.
Well, I'm glad that's not this one.
Yeah. No, I was like, I don't want to do like 12 midnight till 3 in the morning because then I would only get the truckers listening live. And I've heard enough trucker conversations driving across country that I'd be like, no, that's not going to work. So let me give it a little earlier time to where it plays good with the East Coast, but it also plays good with the West Coast.
Yeah.
Now, let's get into some of your writing and everything like that. And you mentioned poetry and stuff like that, but when did you realize writing was the right outlet for you?
Well, as a outlet, definitely as a teenager. So, I would actually, I'd be sitting in English class, probably did in other classes too, but I don't know. So I'd be sitting in English class and I'd be writing, my poetry for, coping with my mental health. And the teacher always told me to stop doing it. You need to pay attention. But looking back, it's hilarious because she's telling me to pay attention in English class so that I knew how to write. Meanwhile, I have now published like 10 books. So it's funny how life works out.
Yeah. Like me in high school, in my freshman year, I flunked, I barely passed the 9th grade. I barely moved on to 10th grade, but I failed a lot of classes, and like history, I got a F during the year, but during the finals, I got a B without really studying. And I think it's because I knew everything about it. I have a fascination with history. I have a fascination with the Old West. I have a fascination with the Civil War. So getting into the paranormal aspect of the things, I think it probably was one of my past lives, the reason why I understood history and everything like that. But
could be.
I mean, that's just, like I said, that's another show topic. But now, I did want to ask one thing, because it crossed my mind and I forgot to write it down in questions. And I know the past 2 years have been tough for people, and there have been a lot of depression and anxiety and stuff from the lockdowns and everything like that, which personally I think it was planned, but that's another topic for another show. And of course, in my opinion. But anyways, what is your take on people that have been dealing with the depression because of the lockdowns?
Well, luckily, the lockdowns are lifted, at least I think in most places. So they can start kind of getting back into whatever their normal or whatever it is that they're trying to do by getting out the house. But along with that is now, after 2 years, you have to kind of reintegrate yourself into life with other people. Yeah. Which sounds kind of silly, but at the same time, we get so accustomed to being at home, and then we have to go communicate with real life humans again. Yeah. So, I mean, luckily in my house, the lockdown was actually a blessing in my house. So, it's hard to speak from a personal experience on that one, but I do know some people, like my godmother, she was a single person. So when lockdown happened, she's all by herself. She didn't have anybody else to kind of, hug or whatever. Like, yeah, okay, you can phone somebody, but it's not the same as being able to physically see somebody or give somebody a hug, or even just getting out of your house and going someplace. Yeah. Right? We talked about vitamin D. When we're stuck at home, we don't have that. Yeah, okay, you can go into your backyard, but when we don't have that, let's go meet my friend and go for a walk or that, then you don't think about it. You just sit on the couch and continue watching TV. So I'm glad that the lockdowns are over, so that people can start getting back out. But I hope that we don't go back to what it was like before COVID, because I don't think the world was working perfectly beforehand either, right? Like, I like having my 6 feet bubble around me when I go out places.
Yeah, me, I was the opposite. And again, that's just my take on it. Of course, when everything was locked down, I was still going out to, like, we got the Fort Worth Stockyards here in Fort Worth, Texas. I was going out there, and of course, everything shut down. But I'm still going out there to show people what the heck's going on. And there were people walking around still. But I had no problem. And of course, what people would say is I had, quote, comorbidity, if I could talk. I'm getting that tongue twister like you have.
Yep.
But
Yeah. Now I can't say comorbidity.
Yeah, that word. But with sleep apnea, emphysema, and stuff like that. But I never really got sick, and I still would be talking to people that weren't afraid of this and everything like that. And it still surprises people to this day. Like, how the heck did you not get sick? I said, I think because I've gotten away from the medication that was actually making me sick. But again, another thought for another show, another day. But I was out there enjoying the sun and showing people that we really don't have to fear this as much as they're producing that fear. And I think that played a lot on the mental health of people.
Oh, it definitely did. When you're scared, and especially at the beginning, when we didn't know anything about it, right? It can be scary when all the news was showing, in Italy and the piles of dead bodies in the arenas. That was scary.
Yeah, like I said, I think it played a big part in the mental health, and the lockdowns didn't help either with it, because they were showing all this stuff and everything like that. But let's get back into the writing. Like I said, that's another topic for another day.
Yep.
And another guest. I think I'm going to talk about that on Wednesday with my guest.
There you go.
But anyways, you mentioned poetry, and that was your start in basically writing.
Yeah. So that was how I got started. And then I had also written little plays for my church and stuff. I'd always really written things. When I was younger, like probably 7, 8, I used to write a pretend newspaper for my household and do like movie reviews and stuff. So I probably should have went into like writing when I went to college, but I didn't. Yeah. I was always a writer.
Yeah, like me, like I said, I'm working on a screenplay, and I started working on a book too, but I never got really into getting the book done, I'm actually more interested in trying to finish the horror movie screenplay than I am the book, which talks about the paranormal dark side, but I'm more interested in doing the movie, and like I said, I'm not a big writer. I'm not a big person that loves to read books or anything like that. But I will do a lot of skim reading. Basically, that's how I come up with a lot of questions for my guests, because I don't have time to sit down, and sometimes guests have tons and tons of information that would take me a whole day. I'm like, no, let me pick what I want to ask the guests, what I want to talk about, rather than go through tons and tons of information. So what I do is more skim reading, and I think that helps in doing like screenplay work and stuff, because you are basically skim reading in a sense. Now, talking about your books, tell the listeners about the books that you have talking about mental health.
So my very first book, is called Thoughts of a Wanderer. And so those poems actually that I'd written as a teenager, those very, very dark poems, I turned them into my first book. That's how I got into actually officially becoming an author, is I found those poems in my basement, didn't want to throw them out. So I put them together. And so that's how it all started. And so that is called Thoughts of a Wanderer. I've actually been thinking about kind of tweaking it a bit and re-releasing it again, but we'll see. That's down the line. And then last year I released, it's called Embracing Me, and it is currently the favorite thing I've written. And it's all about my struggle with depression, but more importantly, the coping strategies that I've learned so that other people can try to gain some insight into them and ways that you can support people that are dealing with mental health.
Okay. Well, we are at the last commercial break of the night, but we'll get back into our books. And, of course, the phone lines will be open and the chat will be open for more questions and calls after the break. We'll be right back.
Oh, please stay a while. I'll reach up to hold your sunlit face. Feels like a handful of silk now. I'm in your warm embrace. Oh, I hope this feeling lasts till the oceans turn to glass and the world around us turns and fades to black. Together we'll hold back the sun in this moment forever young. Against the stream of time we'll run, baby.
Do you need music for your radio show, podcast, or YouTube channel, but need a music license to play it on your show? Well, go to artlist.io and check out the plans they have. They have 3 plans to choose from: personal, unlimited, and enterprise. All the music that you hear on the show is from Artlist, and there is a banner ad on the show's website. Check it out today. Do you love the strange, unusual, and weird unexplained mysteries? Do you like reading about the paranormal and other happenings? Well, I have the website for you, unexplainedmysteries.com. On there you will find so much, such as the latest news and articles, forums, news with video, and so much more. That's unexplained-mysteries.com, or you can click on the banner ad on the show's website to take you right there. Do you love history? Do you wonder what happened on this day in history? Well, check out history.com/this day in history and find out what happened on this day in recorded history. You can also click on the image on the Talk of the Night website under This Day in History and check out one of the many things that happened. The show's website lists a different event in history every day, so check it out today.
Windows wide, the curtains fly to catch the evening breeze. Without you here to keep me warm, believe I'd rather freeze. Believe I'd rather freeze. And how long can we walk that line between the sea and sand? How long can we bide our time for dreams we never planned? For dreams we never planned. When the sky said the winter time.
To call into the show, Skype Talk in the Night, or by phone at 817-717-1280. Now back to Talk in the Night with your host, Paranormal Phil.
Okay, and we are back with my guest, Randi-Lee Bowslaugh, as we continue talking about her books and everything like that, and we're going to finish up things here in a moment. But again, if you do have a question that you do want to ask my guest, you can call into the show using the Skype name Talking the Night, or by phone at 817-717-1280, or go over to Spreaker.com, sign up for a free account. It don't cost a thing. You don't have to record anything. Sign up. Click on Talking the Night, click on the live show, scroll down a little bit, there's a chat bar right there, pop in the chat, say hi, let me know you're listening, and discuss the show with me and anybody else in the chat. I do interact with all my listeners, so I welcome all my listeners listening live, or whether you're able to listen live or record it, I do welcome all the things, and if you do have questions, feel free to ask me even after the show, because maybe I can help with some of this stuff, the wide knowledge that I have. Now, get back to you, Randy, is that I swear as much information that I have in my head, I should look like Megamind. I do have a lot of knowledge up there. It's come from a lifetime of learning and doing things. Most people that I feel that read books, I'm not down on anybody that reads or writes books or anything like that, because that's their personality, that's what they love to do. But they're more of the Imagineers, whereas somebody like me is more get out and do it type of aspect. And if I fail, I fail. But that's just me. But let's talk about your book, because before the break we were talking about Embracing Me, that book. What are some of the thoughts around suicide that you shared in the book?
So I shared my plan. I told people what I had planned and why. Basically what I had told you earlier, when I had developed the plan, what it was going to be, and why I knew that I needed help.
Okay. So that was basically the only aspect pretty much of it, correct? Or did you cover other things about suicide?
Yeah, that was pretty much it about suicide. I mean, it talked more about coping strategies in dealing with depression than identifying suicidal potential. Okay.
Yeah. Now, at the start of the show, I mentioned that story up on the Talking the Night website, talkingthenight.com, about the sailors, 3 of them committing suicide within a week in April and everything like that. And for somebody that has dealt with the military and everything like that, I know a lot of course, my ship was all men, so there was no women to, and of course, in the military, you can't have that kind of interaction with women when you're out to sea. But with an all-guys ship, we found ways around that whole being stuck out at sea, because back then, of course, there was no internet access, really. There was no real way to watch current movies or TV shows. It was always, well, we got a VHS tape for those old enough to remember those.
I had those.
But anyways, there was just that, and we had a certain time where we had to watch whatever the ship put on that broadcast to all the TVs in the berthings, the sleeping areas and everything like that. So we really didn't have a choice. So the way we coped with things back then to where is, and I don't know how the military is coping with things these days, because I've been out of the military service like almost 30 years, 25 years. So I don't know how they deal with it, but back then we used to have wrestling matches between different berthings, and of course we didn't. This is why my body's in shit condition too, is because we didn't have the pads that like a normal wrestler would have. We were get body slammed onto tables, choke slam. I almost actually killed a person by accident, just because I had them in a scissor lock and around the chest, which was designed to make them tap out, but not kill them. And somehow they had their arms down, and I didn't realize it. I had my head back, and my legs, talking about the running 10 mile and a half and 10 flat, my legs were strong. So when it slipped around his neck, luckily we had somebody up there to kind of referee the match, because he's like, let him go, you're killing him. I did not realize I was able to leg press 600 pounds. So imagine leg scissors around your neck putting that much pressure on the body. Just even the chest, I mean, it could break rib cages pretty much. But But I wasn't putting that much pressure. But when it slipped down to the neck, that's where it's like, oh shit, I'm going to kill this guy with that much pressure. But we found ways to relieve the stress, and that was our way of relieving stress. Of course, back then, you didn't really tell the officers that because the government could get you for destroying government property. There's a lot of things that we did, although luckily our captain was okay with certain aspects of it. We just had to tone it down a little bit when he came around. But he would actually come down to watch the match. Some of the officers on the ship just were like, nope, don't do that around us. You will get court-martialed.
Oh, jeez.
But we found ways to relieve stress, and I wonder, like, and I know you can't really speak on this aspect of the military and everything like that, but I wonder how different, like they're talking about, the story talks about doing team building and morale boosting, and how that could possibly play a part in mental health.
I definitely think if they do it right, it could boost mental health. But I think also mental health is so individualized. So boosting morale is important because, as we talked about before, when you find something you enjoy doing, it boosts your, it's going to release your feel-good hormone. So it's going to boost your serotonin and all that happy stuff. But at the same time, if somebody is depressed because they're missing the birth of their baby or something like that, boosting morale isn't going to change that. So there might, I would think, putting more support into therapies. And I don't know, I can't pinpoint anything about the military, but just putting something more into therapies and making it so that if somebody, and this is based on what I see on TV, because I don't have much to base it on, but making it so that if they are feeling like they need to talk to someone, making it safe for them to do so. Because what I see on TV is if you say that, you're having those thoughts, that's it, you're out, goodbye. And so that would make it where people don't want to ask for help or want to say what they're feeling, and then that potentially leads to suicide.
Yeah. Now, I think you mentioned this earlier, and that kind of leads, that last question, thought, everything leads to my next question. I think you mentioned the harsh reality of feeling the need to hide these thoughts and everything like that. Why do you think people feel the need to hide the thoughts of depression or anxiety or even the talk of suicide?
That's the big part of the stigma around it, is that people either don't believe mental health is a real thing. I've had this discussion with many people where they're trying to tell me that depression's not real and your life is fine. What do you have to be depressed about? Or, those kind of comments, or, oh, that person has it worse than you. Just because somebody has it worse than somebody else doesn't mean that they might not be depressed. But because you can't see mental health, it's not something you can look at a person and go, oh, they're limping, so they're mentally ill.
Yeah.
No, they're limping because they're physically ill. Yeah. And so some people still don't believe it's a real thing. And so if you say that you're feeling depressed or you say you're having suicidal thoughts, sometimes those around you are going to look at you differently. And they're going to think that you're just making it up, that that's not real, that you should just be able to suck it up. And so why should you say anything at all if that's going to be how people respond to you?
Yeah. And it's funny that you brought up that, because I do want to kind of bring up something that I talk about as far as with the paranormal and being able to see and communicate with spirits and stuff. I always tell people that, and I'm not going to go into the whole thing that I talk about because I mentioned it enough on the show, but anyways, when we're young and stuff, we're not corrupted by the everyday world, and we have that ability to see the other side, the spirit world. But a lot of times we're told growing up that it's not real, it's just our imagination and stuff like that. And I feel that ability gets pushed from the front of our conscious mind to our subconscious. I'm wondering if it's basically the same thing with what you were talking about with the mental health, is you get told, well, it's just your imagination and stuff like that. You're not really feeling depressed and stuff like that. And you almost, like the subconscious, people think it's locked away to where you can't think about it, but it's locked away, but it's still prevalent in your mind and can come forward at any time.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good parallel between the two things. My kid is always telling me he sees our spirits in this house. My house is over 100 years old, so there probably is.
Yeah.
And yeah, whatever we're taught as kids, that's make believe. It's not real. That's what we internalize. So same thing with mental health. If we're told it's not real or suck it up, then that's what we're internalizing. And then when we become adults, we don't want to ask for help.
Yeah. Now, I did notice on your website that you did have a book, and it kind of segues into this next question. I do tend to, for some odd reason, I tend to write down the questions, and somehow I know I'm going to segue to that. I don't know why.
Because you've been doing it long enough.
But I saw you had a book titled A Little Scare. Are those short stories real creepy like ghost stories? That and are they made up, or ones that have truth to them?
They're totally made up. Hopefully there's no truth to them. That would be bad with the monsters that I've created. But yeah, I love all things horror. When I was, so remember how we were talking about dreams earlier? So when I was pregnant with my kid, and my kid loves all things horror too. And maybe that's because when I was pregnant with him, I had a dream that I married Freddy Krueger.
Wow.
I love all things horror.
That is a cool and creepy story, but I love it.
So I had to put out a collection of short scary stories, and hopefully I'm going to put out another one this year, because I have a list of more ideas for some more scary stories. I just gotta find some time to sit down and write some more.
Well, I think one reason why I kind of got into the paranormal field and enjoyed talking and understanding this aspect of the whole paranormal is because when I was born, the day that I was born, the actual day, the month, day, and year all combined together, I was born on the day that The Exorcist was released in theaters.
Oh, yeah. See, you had to be
morning.
either paranormal or horror.
And I'm both.
There you go.
But I was born in the morning, and the show came out in theaters in the afternoon. So I think that's why. And of course, I was born the day after Christmas, so I always tell people Halloween is my Christmas. I'm just weird like that.
I joke that my kid had to be here for Halloween because he was supposed to be born like 2 days after Halloween, and he came a week early because he had to be here for Halloween.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure he's gonna love Halloween.
Oh yeah, life. Every year his birthday involves dressing up.
Yeah, me. I make up my own mask and everything like that. I scare people like nobody's business. I've had kids in the fetal position.
Oh, jeez.
as I stand over them and to where they're so afraid they can't move. And of course, that can play on mental health too. But
Yeah. But I mean, I feel like they know what they're getting into. It's not like you're just walking down the street randomly, I hope.
Trust me, I got another one. I snuck up behind somebody in a zombie mask that was not what you would think of a mask, but it was a prosthetic, so it looked real. It was attached to my face.
Oh, jeez.
And it looked like bones and everything like that, and rotten skin and everything, because I was good at doing that type of mask work. I created a lot of my prosthetics. And I snuck up behind somebody, looked at over their shoulders and looked at them. They ended up tossing their phone 15 feet up in the air. And I had to walk off. I was trying not to break character. I had to zip into the hidden spot where it wasn't part of the public so I could laugh.
Oh, jeez.
And the worst one, and you mentioned about walking down the street. Before I even worked at an amusement park, I would build my own sets in front of my parents' house and everything, and do my own haunted house.
That's awesome.
And it was late at night. All the kids had pretty much come by, so I was like, okay, I would still be in costume, and have my mask ready, but I still had makeup on, so to kind of blacken the eyes and everything, and blood around the mouth, because there was no part of the prosthetic mask. So I was like, okay, I can take off the mask so I can breathe easier, because it's hot wearing that after a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, there's no more kids coming. Well, these two ladies come down the street pushing strollers, and I'm thinking, okay, they got small kids. I'm not going to scare them, but I still want to give the kids candy. And so I had the mask off. I tried not to look scary as possible. Unfortunately, I guess I was still kind of scary. Because they got up there.
So at least you tried.
And I was hanging out by the tree, but I guess they did not see me. I kind of blended in with the tree with all the black.
Okay.
And one of the ladies pushing a stroller saw me. She took off running halfway down the street before a friend could stop her, but she left her kid in the stroller right there.
Oh my god!
I was like, sorry, come back. I'm not a real monster.
Oh my
But I probably scarred her for life. But anyways, we're almost out of time here. So tell people where they can find out more about you and the books.
So all the books can be bought on Amazon. So if you just search my name on the Amazon search, Randi-Lee Bowslaugh, you'll find them. As well, you can check out my website at rbwriting.ca. And follow me. I'm on Facebook at RB Writing and The Write or Die Show. I'm on Instagram at Randy B Writing and TikTok. I love TikTok. I'm on
That's
there.
That's one thing I never got into was TikTok.
Oh, I love it. So I'm on there at The Write or Die Show. And I also have one where I feature all of my very cute fur babies.
Okay. And how can people get a hold of you if they want to talk to you about mental health on your YouTube channel?
So if you go to the website, you'll be able to find the contact page, and it'll send me an email. So the rbwriting.ca.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for coming on the show, sharing all your knowledge about mental health and everything like that, because as much knowledge as I have about a lot of things, and I'm not one person that likes to focus all my energy on one aspect of things. I love to spread around the knowledge a little bit, and so I know a little bit about everything rather than somebody that knows certain things about certain things, and that's all they stick to. And I feel that if we learn a little bit about, just a little bit about, even if you want to stick to one, like you're into mental health and writing and everything, I get that. But also at the same time, spread out your knowledge a little bit, learn a little bit about a little bit of everything else, and that'll help us keep growing and learning, and hopefully we'll end up to where the point where we'll have so many things to think about and so many things to do when we're not doing something and maybe feeling depressed, that we can get to doing something that we find interest in, and maybe we can hopefully end the stigmatism of mental health.
I agree.
But again, thank you for coming on the show and everything like that. And tomorrow night, we're going to be joined by my guest, Nicole Fannin, as we talk about dating and relationship in this day and age. We're going to be talking about the current state of dating and relationship with apps and different sites about it, and then the comparison of dating in person versus online. We'll also talk about her books, Catalyst and Ignite, and Hearts of Desire. I think it's, if I remember correctly, it's Hearts of Desire series. But we're going to be joined by her tomorrow night, and hopefully no problems tomorrow night with that guest, to where we can get started on time. I apologize. We're running a little late tonight. We ran 10 minutes late because my computer had some gremlin problems. I must have fed them after midnight. And they snuck into the water. But I love referencing that movie. But
I love that movie.
And of course, you can go to Talk on the Night to find out all information about Randi and her book. There's a banner ad at the top of the page. It's linked up to her website. Click on that. It'll take you right there, so that way you don't have to listen to the show several times and be like, what did she say? No, you can find it right there on the Talk of the Night website, talkofthenight.com, and it'll take you right to her website. Also, be sure to follow the show on all the show's social media sites: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Discord, YouTube. Most of the YouTube videos are just the sound recordings of the show, but every once in a while I will post a video about something else in the paranormal or something else. So be sure to check out all those social media channels. Like, subscribe, follow on all of them. And, of course, do the same for my guest tonight, Randi-Lee Bowslaugh, and everything like that. I'm sure I will, too. Probably not till tomorrow if I got time. But and, of course, check out the website. There's so much more. And until tomorrow night, when I welcome my guest, Nicole Fannin, as we talk about dating and relationship in this day and age, and so much more. I shall see you on the dark side. Good night from Talking the Night.
It's late at night. Darkness has fallen. Turn on the radio, and you hear him talking. Listening to what he has to say, all about the paranormal and all of the things. When he sounds off, you can hear him say, see you on the dark side. Yes, you can hear